start? It's 10 o'clock, I think.
Give me 1 second, Fadi. I think we're missing only Iran, right?
Okay.
Tehran. We have someone from Tehran. Okay, so then we're. Oh, yes, Ms. Nasseri is there. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. May I ask everyone to who's a presenter, a panelist, basically, to switch on their cameras because we would like to take a group photo before we start. And so, if I can ask also our colleagues. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Nasseri. Thank you very much for joining us.
There's no problem.
Can hear you.
There is a small time delay on because of the connection, obviously, but we can hear you. Okay.
Yassine, can you hear me, Yassine? Yassine?
Yes.
How I can get out, like, who is not showing their cameras? Can I get them out of the photo?
Julien, you here?
Apologies, we're just asking our technical staff to make sure that we have only tiles or on the group photo and not just names. So some of the colleagues who are already online before you have their names, as you can see on your screen too. And it's just
Julien, tu peux te connecter, s'il te plaît.
a small
tu peux check.
detail, but I think it is worth a wait of a few more seconds. Our colleagues, the technical people, are helping us out.
We can start and then it can come later.
Okay, all righty. So then, Mr. Comer, could you please commence the webinar?
I will go now. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, let's go.
Thank you. Good morning, dear colleague. Good morning to Dr. Shamila Nair Bedouel, our ADG at UNESCO. Good morning to all the scientists, the water leaders who are actually giving their assistance in this webinar, COVID-19 Implication on Water Management in Megacities, organized by UNESCO, the Division of Water Science. I would like first to warmly congratulate this big effort and marvelous work that UNESCO has planned to gather us all together in this webinar and really to work very efficiently in the water sector in order to enhance action to face COVID-19 and all the related issues linked to water. I would like to warmly welcome you, and we will have a very good, fruitful discussion between the leading voices that are here today and that have confirmed their presence in this panel. And we want to share all together our experiences and knowledge as policymakers, as water experts, in order also to bring together the resilience that we need to face this pandemic of COVID-19. Allow me also to wishing you very good courage, prosperity, and strength to overcome this worldwide health crisis of COVID-19. We are going to win this crisis together by working side by side, all of us. Let me please give the opportunity to introduce a prominent scientist, Dr. Shamila Nair Bedouel. Dr. Nair Bedouel is the Assistant Director General for Natural Science at UNESCO. We've been working together, I guess, since almost 2 years. Dr. Nair Bedouel has a PhD in life science from the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And prior to returning in UNESCO, she was served as director of the Ozone Action Program in UNEP for 8 years. Dr. Shamila was responsible for implementing the multilateral fund for the Montreal Protocol and coordinating a network of 147 national ozone action offices. Prior to that, she pursued her research career at a very famous research institute in France, l'Institut Pasteur à Paris, and also at the MIT University Park in Boston in the United States of America. And Dr. Shamila has been director of research at the University of Paris 5 in France and was nominated first-class director of research at INSERM in 2017. Dr. Shamila has published in numerous scientific journals, and she is the co-inventor of several patents. Shamila, we're very happy and honored to have you with us this morning, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, your excellencies, and thank you very much, Professor Fadi, for this very warm welcome to your webinar and this joint webinar with the Intergovernmental Hydrology Program. I'm really humbled by your introduction. Thank you very much. I would like to start by saying that we at UNESCO are deeply honored to have Professor Fadi Komer to lead as the president of the Intergovernmental Hydrology Program. You may all be aware that last year, the 193 member states of UNESCO, during its General Conference of Governments, decided to approve the new statute of the International Hydrological Program. The new statute became an intergovernmental hydrological program, giving value to the role of the hydrological cycle and water for development. And we are delighted and honored that Professor Fadi Komer, a well-known hydrologist and water specialist who has worked and been an advisor to numerous governments across the world, promoting not only water science management and access to water and sanitation, not only in France, but also in different countries, especially in the Middle East. We are delighted and honored that he has been nominated the president of the IHP Council and the IHP Bureau and the IHP family. And he's going to lead us through the next years for developing a new strategy for the IHP. So thank you very much. We are delighted, Dr. Fadi Komer, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much.
My dear colleagues, this webinar would not be possible if we do not hear from you, if we do not hear about your experiences, your expertise, and how you've been managing water, sanitation, and hygiene, not only within the cities, outside of the cities, but also pre-COVID, current COVID, and building back the new normal. So all of you, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, your expertise, your knowledge is extremely crucial to helping us build back the new normal, water for COVID, water post-COVID, and impact of water in the cities. Now, I would like to share with you just some of my ideas and thoughts. I want to, first of all, sincerely thank you for joining this particular webinar. Cities and people are really adapting to the new normal, and we have seen this across the world. However, what would be the new normal? The pandemic has raised the different bars for different sectors, making the new normal very difficult, forcing people to look at new innovative approaches to live with each other to accept each other, and to understand each other. But the pandemic also forced us to dialogue with each other on the recent water management challenges, not only the impacts raised by the pandemic, but the impacts of living closer together. And the pandemic has shown us that. We are hoping that this webinar will give us a better understanding of the additional challenges to achieve water safety, water security, and water access, not only for the cities, but beyond the cities, and what would be the operating conditions that the pandemic will force us into. Now, planning for improved urban water resilience will really need to look beyond the boundaries of a city, beyond the boundaries of a mega city, and consider the long-term impacts of urban expansion and on water security. The demands of increased population and urbanization will further exacerbate the water stress. And it is said that by 2050, 40% of the world population is likely to live under severe water stress. We've also been told, according to the UNESCO World Water Assessment Report and the World Water Development Report, which UNESCO produces on behalf of the UN family, to advise governments and member states across the world on the status of water and the trend in water. This report has highlighted the need that close to 70% of the world's population will live in urban agglomerations by 2050. The size, the density, and the number of the urban centers is increasing considerably in the last decades. What will then be the impact of water management in these cities, in the mega cities, and what is the added impact of COVID-19 or the pandemic as we all know about it today? Now, we are delighted to work with you to hear about your experiences, and we would like to share these experiences because the megacities really stand out in the front lines to addressing the current crisis. But we should not forget the rural areas. While the megacities are recognized due to the urban agglomeration with over 10 million inhabitants and is really home to 12.5% of the global population, because of the pandemic, because of the impact of climate change, we see more and more development of urbanization across the world, even my own country, like South Africa, where Cape Town has even been labeled as so-called water city or water-sensitive cities. How many more cities across the world will be nominated water-sensitive cities? By 2030, the world is projected to have 43 megacities with over 10 million inhabitants. What would be the impact then of those growing 43 megacities in the world and the compounded impact of the COVID-19? Now, I would like to call upon all of you that as we start looking at the global public health crisis and the impact of COVID on urbanization and megacities and water, we need to also understand how water is a connector to all of the SDGs. And with this in mind, I would like to inform you that recently partners launched in New York what is called the SDG 6 Accelerator Framework. And this SDG 6, which is access to water and sanitation, can be the accelerator for all of the SDGs. And what will be then the impact of COVID on access to water to achieve the Agenda 2030, and especially the world's projected 43 megacities by 2030, with the increased 10 million inhabitants. And I believe that for future planning for urban water and climate resilience, we would need to really take into account the planning for the future. How can one take into account the broader assessments of water resources? That means cities and beyond. We know today that the ecosystems are extremely important for our planet Earth and for human well-being. And our water resources are part of those ecosystems. So how can we ensure that the planning in the future will take into account the urbanization footprints on the water resources, the urbanization footprints of our ecosystem services. In many systems, many countries across the world, and in many settings, the urbanization will certainly damage the ecosystems that provide water and other natural resources which are necessary for sustainable growth. So let's look at beyond the COVID-19 implication, which is water management in megacities, and look at the impact of this on women, impact on Agenda 2030, impact on Africa's Agenda 2063, and impact on the small island developing states. How can we all work together, share experience, and build the urbanization resilience to water that we would need for our future? In planning for the future, as I indicated earlier, we do need to look beyond simply the tap to toilet concept. We need to look at the technical advances, the population growth, the economic growth, and also how to manage the competing sectors. And I'm therefore calling upon the need for urgent urban water resilience to ensure that no one is left behind. I would like to sincerely thank all of you for joining UNESCO in this very unusual webinar, and I wish you good deliberations over the next days. But before I conclude, I would like to sincerely thank each and every one of you for joining us here, for sharing with us your experiences so that we can take your experiences across the world. At UNESCO, we waste no efforts to continue to provide support, not only through the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, through the World Water Assessment Program, but also through the UNESCO Water Family of 169 IHP committees in 169 countries, the 36 Category 2 Centers of Excellence of Water of UNESCO, which bring together the unusual expertise across the world, whether it's flooding, sedimentation, understanding sustainable development, and the science of the hydrological systems. But we also work with a number of chairs, over 50 chairs. These are experts and a family of UNESCO water we would like to bring to the services of the populations across the world so we can improve water management in megacities. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all of you and to especially our president of the IHP, Professor Fadi Komad, but every one of you, ladies and gentlemen, for sharing your experience with us. Finally, I would also like to thank our colleagues of the Water Division under the leadership of Mr. Dr. Abu Amani, but especially all the team that have worked together to bring us together here today in this online unusual meeting. So my sincere and humble thanks to Alex Magarakakis. Thank you very much for enabling us to meet here today. And I do hope one day to have the pleasure welcome you to Paris, to UNESCO, your home, that will be able to look at water as a connector, not just urban water management, but beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our ADG, Dr. Shamila Nair Bedouel,
谢谢 Shamila
for
Bedouel
this historical, scientific speech concerning the link between water and COVID-19. C'est un discours magistral. Je vous en félicite. And let me also take a lot of your ideas, Dr. Shamila, that you have presented to us, and a lot of your thoughts, and express my sincere wishes that those thoughts will be directly taken as a part of the recommendation that will conclude this panel at 12 o'clock. You have highlighted a lot of issues linked to water security. You have highlighted a lot of issues linked to water demand management and sanitation. And also you have highlighted resilience, the very magic word. It's a word that we need all to enhance and to cooperate and to bring also a strategy linked to resilience, because all together, side by side, as you have said, we are going to succeed by securing the water for our future generation. I would like also to thank you for highlighting the role of our colleague in IHP under also your leadership and under the leadership of all our colleague who works in IHP, as Alexandros, as Dr. Abu Amani, you have cited them. They are doing marvelous job. Thank you for everybody. Let me now pass directly to tackle the program of our panel. I'm delighted and honored to moderate the first panel on the webinar, which concerns sharing experiences and learning from each other is a key for building block in all our mega cities in order to develop sound policy and regulatory framework tailored to address the needs of the future society that our future generation will live. In order to accomplish this, it is necessary, dear colleague, to establish a dialogue between different stakeholders and at various levels. Today, 10 megacities will discuss the implication of the pandemic of water resources and services. Allow me to present our distinguished guests who comprise the panel of today's webinar. First of all, I will start with the city of Beijing. It is represented by Ms. Lingyun Ji, Professor, North China University of Technology. And then Mr. Yu Wang from Guangzhou, Associate Professor at the Center for Social Science, Southern University of Science and Technology. We welcome you also. From Jakarta, we count for the voices of Mr. Priyanto Bambang Hernowo, the President Director of PAM Jia Drinking Water Company from Indonesia. Mr. Imran Ahmad, Professor of Civil Engineering Department from the NED University of Engineering and Technology, and Mr. Farhan Anwar, Town Planner of Karachi and consultant at the World Bank, both in Karachi. We welcome you also. From Lagos, Mr. Likan Shodindi, Permanent Secretary of the Office of Drainage Services and Water Resources of the Lagos State Ministry of Environment and Water Resources, and Mr. Muminu Badmus, Managing Director of the Water Corporation in Lagos. We welcome you also. Mr. Pramod Sharankar, former Deputy Municipal Commissioner of the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. From Shanghai is both represented by Mrs. Chao Liu, Assistant Professor at the College of Architecture and Urban Planning, and also Professor at Tongji University in Shanghai. Mrs. Simin Naseri, Professor at Tehran University of Medical Sciences and Scientific Advisor of National Water and Wastewater Engineering State Company, and Mr. Hubballah Fatahi, Advisor of the Department of Environment and Sustainable Development of Tehran Municipality. Welcome you also. Mr. Duan Chen, Deputy Director of Science and Technology, Exchange and International Cooperation Division, Chaigyang River Scientific Research Institute, and Mr. Xiaogyang Tang, Chief Engineering of River Basin Water Environment Research Division, Chaigyang River Scientific Research Institute, both representing the city of Wuhan. We thank you all for your willingness to participate to this webinar as our distinguished guests. The webinar consists of 3 sessions. The first session will focus on the impact of COVID-19 had on the water sector and socio-environmental risks associated with it. So we will start by the first session, and I will call from Mumbai Mr. Pramod Charankar, from Jakarta Mr. Priyatno Bang Hironowo, and from Tehran Mrs. Simin Nasiri and Mr. Habibullah Fatahi, if he's here. So let me ask you the question about this panel. The first question, and we need your response on that. Very clear. We will have 5 minutes for this panel with you. So the first question, what are the particular impact on water consumption and the pressure on water availability? This is the first question. And the second question, can you please share with us statistics, observation, which show people's different behavior in using water between the pre-COVID and the post-COVID period? So the floor is yours, Mr. Pramod, Mr. Priyatno, and Mrs. Simin Nasiri. Mr. Pramod from Mumbai. Can you unmute your micro, please? Let's invite also the other attendees from Beijing, Mrs. Ling Guang, from Karachi, Mr. Imran Ahmad, and from Shanghai, Mr. Byuwang Chao. Also, if you'd like to react on both questions. So let me remind you that we have only 5 minutes in order to respond on both questions. Mr. Pramod, you have the floor. I can't hear you. Qu'est-ce qui se passe? C'est bon. Yes, go ahead, please, now. J'entends pas. Je fais Alexandros. Dis-lui que je ne l'entends pas.
We cannot hear Mr. Pramod.
Yes,
Mr.
Alexandros, I can't hear him.
Okay, can we proceed with another panelist that
Yes.
we have checked?
Yes, let's proceed with Mrs. Simin Nasiri. Ladies first, always. I should have started with you, Professor Simin.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, yes. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Fadi Komen and Dr. Shamila. Je suis très contente de vous voir comme ça.
Ah, parfait.
Yeah. And also all of the UNESCO water managers. Yes, I've done what I'd like. I'm very happy to be invited from you in this international webinar. It's very important. As Dr. Shamila was talking about it, it's very, but I try to speak very shortly because the time is very limited. Actually, as you know, Tehran is the capital city of Iran, and the population of the basic part of Tehran is about 9 million. But adding the outskirt population, the whole population reaches to about 14 million. Something which is very important is that the water access statistics in the urban areas of Tehran is normally 99.89%, and in rural areas of Tehran is 93.73%. During the first months of COVID-19 pandemic, something which was happened was about hand washing, which was increased, and the water consumption increased in Iran to about 12.7%, and in Tehran, only in Tehran, to 5%. And this was really very a basic problem in Tehran. I should add that water consumption in Tehran has decreased gradually to 1% now. Why? Not because of less water consumption, but for the reason of reachment to the highest consumption capacity of Tehran. So in some regions, for example, in Tehran, we do not have any special problem, but in urban areas of Tehran, we have water shortage because of high temperatures that we have during the last months. So in Tehran, there were no water availability problem during the last months. But something which will happen is that in order to manage, as a very small scientist, I try to be with water and wastewater managers in Tehran and all of the parts of Iran in order to show what are the basic problems and how can we help them in this category.
Thank you, Dr. Simin, for this very direct, interesting answer. And we all, as you have said, struggling in order to ensure the water demand management after this crisis for our population. And let me take also the floor again with Mr. Pramod. Could you take the floor, Mr. Pramod, to answer
yes,
the
can you
first
hear
question?
me now?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So what before this COVID pandemic, that is December or January, whatever was the water quantity brought to the city, the municipal corporation decided to maintain with the same quantity was brought during the pandemic period also, that is March, April, May, June together. Because of the restriction on the commercial activities, the consumption from the commercial consumers was considerably reduced. We don't have the exact data, but almost zero. But the same water was again diverted to the residential consumers in a way, so they could avail the better quantities of water. That was a good thing that happened. So far as the pressures are concerned, luckily the monsoon for 2019 was good. So the lake levels were good, water supply was available, and there was not a much problem about on the pressures. That's the thing. The only thing which can affect could be the revenue, which we are assessing. We are revising the estimate budget. That's what I would like to add at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Pramod, about this témoignage coming from Mumbai. Very interesting. We see that the COVID-19 crisis has disrupted our behavior, change also all the sustainability of the water development in our cities. Let me take also from Jakarta, Mr. Priyatno, to give us another témoignage concerning those questions. I remind you that the first question is the impact on water consumption, the pressures on water availability in your cities, and then also what are the statistics, observation concerning the people behavior using the water between the crisis, pre-COVID and after COVID. Can I take, for example, from Jakarta?
Let me unmute.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Fadi, for this opportunity to share with all of you regarding the situation in Jakarta during and after the pandemic. Actually, we still on the pandemic session. Actually, we still have Jakarta positivity rate is above 5%, and also increasing of the positive case day by day among the 200 up to 400 people in a day. So for Jakarta, I'm represent of Pamjaya Water Utilities Company in Jakarta, who serve around 10,500 million inhabitants. And daily, we distribute around 2,200 liters per second. And during the pandemic, we decreased around 5% of the consumption, and also the shifting of the consumption. It's because of the large-scale restriction that we conducted in Jakarta since April 4th, so April 10th. So in industry and commercial is not open normally. Only a certain industry and commercial was open, and also we have work from home. So most of the domestic is increased the consumption up to 11%, and the industry and the commercial is decreased by 23 up to 34% compared with the previously. The problem is due to that the tariff scheme of customer in Asia is internal cost subsidized, where the industrial and commercial group has a higher tariff than the household and social group. It's pricing the operator due to the revenue, of course, will decrease significantly compared with the previous one, because the tariff of the industry and commercial was high and the consumption was decreased. So on the other hand, the operator must still be able to deliver pipe drinking water services to ensure that prevention and termination of the outbreak can continue. So I mean that ensuring access to clean and safe water for hand washing is a central part of a strategy for containing COVID-19. Meanwhile, yet COVID-19 itself is a threat for the water utility to ability to maintain that services due to the pressure on the commercial side. That's the sharing from Jakarta.
Thank you so much for these statistics that you have put on the table. Very, very important. And I think that we all now have a big need of building database centers in order to share our experience and in order to have a clear picture for the future, to face all these for the future. And this reminds me, Alexandros and Shamila, the project of creating an observatory, a worldwide observatory now, in order to monitor all these issues under your leadership at UNESCO. Thank you so much. From Beijing, would you like to take the floor? Ling Yong? No? Okay, let me close the first panel and pass to the second panel. And in the second panel, we have from Wuhan, Mr. Duan Chen, and from Lagos, Mr. Muminu Abdulkuni Badmus. And we have also everybody could participate, but mainly let's start with Wuhan and Lagos. The question that I would like to ask you is following up the discussion on the resources that we have had on the first panel, and the panelists incite us with really very important data. We want to explore the water and sanitation service disruption. Are there any disruption in Wuhan, in Lagos, in water supply and water treatment caused by the COVID-19 crisis? This is a question we would like to have very insight on that, please. Wuhan?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Comel. This is hello from Wuhan, and also good afternoon from China. So as you all know, that Wuhan has been experienced very difficult time earlier this year. So ensuring safe water supply as well as safe wastewater management is one of the most challenging tasks during COVID-19 pandemic. So in terms of water treatment, as you may be aware, also Wuhan has built 2 new hospitals from the scratch in just a few days. So except the astonishing speed of construction, lots of efforts has been put in coordinating the medical wastewater management. So according to Bureau of Water Resources of Wuhan City, the wastewater from the 2 new hospitals, as well as other outlets, which are connected to the assembled areas of quarantine, are under constantly monitored. And also special measures were taken to ensure the wastewater meets the discharge standards, and also to make sure no additional impact to the treatment plant. So in terms of water supply, all the major source water is also monitored before entering the water supply plant, and water samples were taken regularly. So also additional tests were made to detect the 3 major byproducts of disinfectant. According to Bureau of Water Resources of Wuhan City, again, all the indicators remain in the range of good quality, and no single water supply disruption occurred from January to March, which is the time that Wuhan has the most COVID-19 cases. But an interesting fact is that the quality of source water actually becomes a little bit better. The reason behind that is we believe that is decreased human activities. Because at that time that Wuhan is under the entire locking down. So a quick summary is no disruption in both water supply and water treatment in Wuhan, thanks to the tremendous efforts and coordination of different sectors under Wuhan Municipal City. Thank you. That's
congratulations for Wuhan. Thank you for this information. That means that the monitoring of water is going very well, and the chain of water treatment are really being under complete control from the city.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Duan. Thank you. Let's hear from Lagos, our colleague, Mr. Mimino from Lagos.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you. Thank you.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to be part of this webinar today.
Thank you.
And my pleasure also to share some of our experience. As we all know, Lagos is over 20 million population. The pressure pre and during this COVID-19, there has been a lot of pressure on water demand and consumption, especially. Now, the finance and resource to support the operations, what we did immediately before the lockdown to make sure that we stock all the necessary chemicals that are needed. However, we also experienced increase in prices on some of the chemicals and materials that we use. There has been a lot of more pressure on the number of pumps that are being used at various facilities because there are more demand, more consumption when it comes to residential. Commercial, we experience a drop in consumption, but residential has gone up because during the lockdown, most people are home. And the impact on people's lives, families, and communities is very huge. The disruption during the period was just some of the equipment failures. However, we have redundancy. We're able to bring in some of the redundancy that we have, and to work on those equipment that failed. We have to contend with the social and economic issues that the pandemic has caused. It is unclear how long, of course, it will last, but as entire countries are locking down, social life significantly reduced around the globe, not just in Lagos alone, with a detrimental. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. It's very interesting. Very interesting statement.
With a detrimental effect on economic activities. The water was not enough before to the populace, which of course the government is aware of, and they are working towards increasing water supply in the city. We have water shortage. I have to admit that before the COVID. And then there are more stress to the demand, the water demand that we have. So meaning that more people now have to share what is not enough before. But the government is aware of this, and they are working towards, and right now we meet regularly. We have committees that meet during this COVID that is being appointed by Mr. Governor. What we do more tests during this emergency to make sure that there's no intrusion anywhere, even in the raw water side. We increase our testing to make sure that at least we keep up with water quality. COVID-19 directly affects businesses. Continuity as business operation reduced, supply chain dried up. Like I said earlier, there are more increase in the supplies because the price went up somehow, because most of the things that are being used are the foreign exchange went up. So because of that, then there's increase in the supply, in the prices of what the supply chain. And the demand increases because we have to continuously produce water and continuously to fix those equipment that have failed. This risk may quickly lead to liquidity risk, pressure on covenants, refinancing requirements, and increasing third-party risk. But we are managing, and we are coping, and we continue to push water out. Our goal is to make sure that every household are connected to potable water in the city. While the population continue to increase, we are doing everything to catch up and make sure that every household enjoy the potable water. I think I will stop here for now.
Thank you, Mr. Mumino, for this very interesting statement that gave us the real situation in Lagos about the supply on potable water and on sanitation, and which is also very critical is the linkage with the prices that go up. And even though we need as water leaders to continue supplying the population, this is great work that you are making. And I think one of the particularités of this webinar is the experiences that we are sharing together, and this is great. I'm sure that we are going to have very important recommendation and also lesson learned for ours for the future. Let me pass to the third panel, please. And as you know, at UNESCO, we work on science. We have a division that our colleague, Dr. Shamila, preside, the Division of Sciences. And we need now to talk also about science. We need to talk about research, we need to talk about technological tools, and at IHP, at UNESCO, and in our water division, we have a lot of things to give also as experience and to share with all of you. Let me invite Chao from Shanghai, and let me invite also Xiangyang from Wuhan, and ask you a question about the pandemic spread through water and wastewater. Under what condition will the virus possibly be transmitted into and stay in water as the latest research? What can you give us as alignment on that, Chao? You have the floor.
Okay. Liu Cheng. Okay, Cheng. Go ahead.
Okay.
I thought it differently. All right. Anyway.
Yes, ladies first. Always. Okay, Chao. Thank you.
Okay, Professor Comer. Thank you. So actually, we are colleagues. Me, Chao, and Professor Chao. We are colleagues. So actually, I discussed with several researchers yesterday to talk about the pandemic influences on the wastewater and water supply systems. We found that we already observed that some workers in Wuhan sewage treatment plants may be infected by the coronavirus. I mean, because there emerged several workers. They had this disease several months ago. So although there's no evidence, but it indicates strongly that the workers worked in the sewage treatment plants could be infected, because there is evidence that the virus can be detected, the live virus can be detected in those plants. So that's one of our observations. I think this should be researched very seriously in the future in many areas. And also, actually, in both Wuhan and Shanghai, these are two mega cities in China or even in the world. There are a lot of old and aged facilities, like the drainage pipelines, and they leaked, and the material transfers inside and outside a lot. So the virus can be interchanged too through the water supply or through the biocubes. So in the long future, I think the multi-sectors researchers need to work together to track the footpath of the virus, not only in the water supply and the sewage system, but also outside in the soil, in the natural environment, to make sure and to prevent the spread of the virus. So perhaps those are the 2 points of my my observations of the pandemics, the future pandemics research. And beyond this, I want to briefly introduce the Shanghai strategy, Shanghai's management to the pandemic. Actually, in my opinion, Shanghai is one of the most successful cities to cope with this virus, because there is zero local cases in the past reported in the past 3 months. So, but there are imported cases from foreign countries. So just yesterday, the Shanghai's new mayor, who was the former Chinese customs, is our city's mayor now. So I think she will keep on track on the foreign the people and also the shipments and the customs to prevent the future outbreak, the potential outbreak of the virus. So this is the brief introduction. So I wanna let, if time permits, Professor Cao, could you give them some supplements?
Yes.
Yeah, because
if you don't mind, Professor Chow, before I give the floor to Professor Tang, I would like to inform you, all the colleagues, that we have created a short survey of 7 multiple answers and questions for you that will be shown on your screen during the webinar for you to answer and to allow you to provide your opinion regarding 3 main subjects related to the COVID pandemic. I will present the result at the end of the discussion. So please take into consideration this survey of 7 multiple questions for you. Now I will pass the floor to Professor Tang. Professor, could you give us more details about the conditions that the virus is transmitted in water, and what are the level of research that we have arrived till now on that? Professor Tang. I can't hear you, Professor Tang. Are you here? Alexandros?
So I think that we might have a technical problem.
Okay, so let's pass the floor. Let's pass the floor to Professor from Karachi, Imran Ahmad, to give us a statement, or to Professor Farhan Anwar also, please.
And if Mr. Tang could reconnect to be able to speak.
Okay. Meanwhile, let's pass the floor to Professor Ahmad, please, and Professor Anwar, if they can give us some complementary knowledge about the state of the research.
This is Dr. Imran. Thank you, Dr. Fadi, and I'm very thrilled to talk at this forum very first time. And this is one of the important issues definitely anywhere in the world. And definitely I'm presenting Karachi. In Karachi, we are actually, I'll take an extra minute just explaining that what is the situation of Karachi in terms of impact, and then what we are trying to do. We were definitely, like any other city, we were under pressure, like 20% extra demand during COVID-19 earlier months, and fortunately we covered it accordingly because there was a lockdown of industry, so we had enough water from there, and we were able to manage it. But right now we are definitely in crisis because the industries are getting open slowly, and it's a city which already has 45% shortage of water supply on domestic level.
Already.
So that is the situation, in fact. And in terms of the second question you asked about how it's this COVID-19 virus moving in water, in some water supply or wastewater. In fact, we are in line with World Bank. One of the projects we are trying to initiate soon, and that we can try how to detect in this city. It's 20 million people city, and there is not a really organized wastewater system in here. To be very honest, and we are trying to manage with World Bank a project that we can find out where in the city we need to work out that the spread of COVID-19 is because of wastewater. I know that wastewater, when it goes further down, it can contaminate groundwater like anybody else. So it is an alarming situation, and we are on top of it, working successively with World Bank on it. And that's all from my side. And if Farhan Saab want to say something regarding this, please, Farhan Saab, go ahead.
Professor Farhan, please, can you take the floor?
Thank you, Imran. No, I think I would like to discuss more about, what the issues that Shamila earlier talked about, issues of water security, long-term water is a connector, the imprints that, this COVID-19 is leaving, and how, we can bring resilience within the water sector. So I would like to talk about those issues and leave the research to you, Imran. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your statement. Really, it's a very critical situation in Karachi. Thank you for enlightening us about it. And I would like to thank the World Bank, who's doing really a lot of projects all over the world to help the countries that has to face water shortages, implementing a lot of projects on that. I go back to Professor Tang, if he is now connected to have his statement. Professor Tang from Wuhan.
I think he's disconnected and he will join again now.
Okay. So let me go to the second panel. Thank you so much to the third, to the panel number fourth panel. Thank you so much, dear colleague. You enlightened us with all your témoignages, very, very important and interesting. Don't forget the 7 multiple answer and question concerning what I have declared before, that the survey, we need you to work on the survey so that we can provide you with the result when we will finish. Okay, thank you. So let me now ask from Xanghu, Professor Wong again, from Mumbai, Professor Pramod, from Karachi, Farhan, and from Tehran, Mrs. Simin Nasiri, or Mr. Habibullah is with us, and from Shanghai, Professor Chow again. So let me tackle now the problem of COVID-19 and the vulnerable groups. There is a lot of vulnerable groups in all our cities. First question, who is the most vulnerable group among the population of the city? Second question, what are the conditions of this group and how they related to water scarcity? And the third question, did these conditions exacerbated throughout the pandemic? So we have 3 questions to answer in this panel. Let me take first from Tehran, Dr. Simin. Are you connected, Dr. Simin? No? So from Guangzhou, Professor Wang.
Hello.
Hello, Professor
Can you hear me?
Wang. Yes, I'm hearing you. So we have the 3 questions, as you have realized. We'd like to have a very realistic answers and really what's happening now in Guangzhou.
Okay. I think the vulnerable group in the case of China mostly, and especially in Guangzhou here, is the migrant workers. Because those who, actually this situation is not directly related to water itself. I think it's more related to the condition of housing, because we are told to wash our hands regularly and avoid contact and stay at home. But some of the migrant workers are having difficulties to settle down, and this is not the usual case. It's only because of the pandemic. The barriers among provinces, among cities, even among communities suddenly emerge. Because they need to check your identity and check your, in the case of China, QR code. If you're green and you're free to pass, but if for those who do not have a cell phone or having difficulties of using modern technologies, they might be marginalized and they might have difficulties of commuting and moving in and out communities and cities. So for migrant workers, they have a hometown which is not here in Guangzhou, and they come here and work, and especially the pandemic started during the Chinese New Year. This is the annual biggest migration, I think, in human history. There are more than 200 million people, migrating all over China. So and suddenly they put a pause on this migration and start to to tell everyone that we need to stay at home. Obviously, this is the best strategy to contain the virus. But in the same time, some of the migrants are exposed to more risks because they are unable to find a safe, a stable housing at this situation, especially if their hometown are from Hubei or even Wuhan, and they are getting more difficulties. And I think the situation right now has been much improved. Basically, many of you probably are aware that there are only a very limited number of domestic cases in China right now. So economy, social work, and people starting to getting back to normal life right now.
Right.
And when they get back to work, or if they manage to get back home, and then the situation would be better. Because here in Guangzhou, the tap water coverage is basically 100%. Everyone, as long as you have a home, and then you will have a stable supply of water. And safe water right now.
Thank you so much, Professor Young. So the most vulnerable population is the migrant worker, and you have explained for us all the issues of this vulnerable group. Thank you so much. Let me take Professor Pramod from Mumbai to have also his statement on that.
Yeah. See, in city like Mumbai, there are certain pockets where the population density is very high. These areas are known as slums. One of the well-known slum is Dharavi, where their population is about 1 million. Population is about 1 million, and the area is hardly 2.1 square meter. So the population density is almost 270,000 people per square meter.
Wow, the density.
Compared to the population density of the city, which is around 26,000 to 27,000. So in such case, the situation is further aggravated because there's no water supply on a 24-hour basis. It is intermittent water supply. Further, some of the population has been provided with stand post water connection. That is, there is one common tap from which the people will collect water turn by turn. So with such high density, with such restrictions, this becomes the most vulnerable group. The slum areas becomes the vulnerable group on account of high density of population and limited access to water.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this very clear answer. Let me go to Karachi, to Professor Farhan, to give us a short statement on that. Also, about the vulnerable group in Karachi.
Thank you, Fadi. Well, if I have to identify a vulnerable segment of the society in Karachi, then there are people living, those that are living in the informal settlements or squatter settlements that we call Kachi Abadis in Karachi. And while we don't have any definitive, figures, but almost 40 to 50% of the population in Karachi lives in squatter settlements. And even within squatter settlements, you have two categories. One are those that over a period of time have been regularized and can access civic services, but there is still a large portion of the population and squatter settlements that are not regularized, that are illegal, that don't have legal tenure. And since they don't have legal tenure, they cannot have access to water or power or gas, anything. So they have to find some other ways of doing it. So those are, the critical vulnerable, spots in Karachi, and they're spread all over the city. And even under normal circumstances, they are much stressed out, and they're even within the regularized settlements, pipe water supply is very intermittent. And when we talk about the illegal settlements, the unauthorized settlers, there you don't have any water supply coming from the official public water utility. So they have to find so many other ways, like water coming on Suzuki and donkey carts, and buying contaminated water from shops. So now, even in normal circumstances, they're stressed, but during the lockdown, things exacerbated, like many of the city areas were under lockdown. So the water coming from informal sector, suppliers, was restricted. And then, of course, there is the requirement to have good hygiene as a response, safety response, and to COVID-19, washing of hands and everything. So, that, of course, is very difficult to achieve in these areas. In many cases, people have to move out of their homes to access water. Boring is done in many areas. And since, movement was restricted, so, things really got stressed out. And while there is no study done, to come out with some quantitative figures, but definitely, this is a problem which already existed. The level of inequity when it comes to water supply and general, development patterns in Karachi, the level of inequity which generally existed, but it was heightened, during this COVID-19, and it really came out very starkly. And so in the long term, if we see, and I would like to conclude with that, is that one thing that this COVID-19, is that those people who are most affected are the vulnerable communities, within any society. And we have to look for, equitable planning within the city, and how we can ensure that, will mean a lot if we are to, be better prepared to face these situations in the future. And this applies to every aspect of development. But as Shamila said, if you want to build that kind of urban resilience, then it has to be incorporated within the larger planning framework. And so water, and just one last note, that in the city of Karachi, we are, for example, going for high densification, vertical growth, and when already there is water scarcity, almost 45% of the water in Karachi is lost, is non-revenue water, unaccounted for water, or water for which you don't get revenue back in return. To have equitable distribution system, supply system within the city, so that the city is much more resilient, much more capable of meeting these type of stresses in the future.
The answer, dear colleague, as you know, there is a bad side of the COVID-19 and in quote the good side. So I'm sorry to say that, but the good side is that this pandemic issue has enlightened us to think about those kind of issues related to vulnerable groups, and to think about the water for the poor also, how we need to find solutions so that everybody on earth will have the right on water, and how can we finance the right on water for the poor. This is very, very important issue. Thank you so much. Let me go back to Tehran also to have the statement of Professor Simin. Are you with us, Professor Simin?
I don't think she is.
Okay, so I'll go.
Connected, but we do not see her.
Okay, so I go to Shanghai. Professor Chow, can you give us an idea about the vulnerable group on Shanghai?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Camille.
Yeah.
So in terms of the vulnerable group, and I fully agree with the Professor Wang from Guangzhou that the migrants, from other provinces or cities, they are working in Shanghai right now, and they are living in like a temporary house or maybe the working site. And the problem is, and I don't think that's the water supply, because we never experienced any water shortage. Currently, we're experiencing flooding. Okay, too much water. I think that's like the clean water or sanitation, in particularly during this pandemic period. So in this case, we should acquire clean water to cook, for the toilet, and for daily life. I mean, that's a challenging stuff, and how to provide them with the clean and safe water sources. And of course, other residents in Shanghai, they may still live in the old apartments. I mean, they are sharing the same kitchen, toilets. Of course, with the development of or the urbanization of Shanghai, those buildings were being torn down, and they are guaranteed with some independent or the new facility for water supply. And of course, I'm not the water guy. I mean, I'm working IT industry or area. So seems to me, in terms of water supply demands, we are still have the problem here. As I already explained, that in Shanghai particularly, we never experienced any water shortage. However, in other provinces, they do.
Great.
And unfortunately, sometimes they like have a flood. Okay, like right now, a lot of provinces in southern China or central China, they are suffering the flooding. Okay. However, after several months, some drought. Okay, came. So how to balance that? How we can reserve this water during the flooding season while save for the later stage? I mean, how we can utilize the new technology, for instance, big data and artificial intelligence to, balance the scenarios or the situations. I think that's the, maybe it's a very interesting topic for us to, to conduct maybe the further future studies.
Thank you.
Not only, maybe save the people's life during the flooding, but also we can save this water for the later usage. I mean,
thank you,
thank you,
thank you, Mr. Chow, for this statement. Well, when we have flooding and exceptional situation, we all will be vulnerable. So we all will be in a very critical situation. So I saw that on TV today, and we wish that we can advance on research in order to prevent this world from exceptional situation as flooding and drought. Let me pass to the last panel in our session. So as you know, we have discussed the most vulnerable groups in the previous panel. And I would like to now ask a question concerning the access to safe water, and how can we be in the pandemic situation have access to safe water. Let me invite Professor Wang from Zhangyu, Mr. Muminu from Lagos, Mr. Priyatno from Jakarta, and Farhan from Karachi, and Mr. Likan from Lagos. Please. Let's start with Dr. Wang, please.
Hi. How do we improve the condition, situation, protect the vulnerable group? I think, first of all, the continuous improvement of the basic infrastructure is still the key. Water supply infrastructure, sewage treatment, flooding prevention infrastructure, etc. I think these are the key. If there are some areas or places in the city that are not well covered by this infrastructure, we still need to work on that. And if there are some places or human settlements are prone to risks that are associated to floods, which would further lead to public health situation, these areas need to be protected. Secondly, I think we need to provide special care to those vulnerable groups. There are always risks, and there are always uncertainties that we cannot control. And when that risks and uncertainties occur, we need to find we need to be prepared for this kind of situation. For instance, some public services urgent services need to be provided, or basic social services need to be provided to the vulnerable groups. For instance, the migrant workers I mentioned, not all of them are vulnerable. Only those who are stuck in the city, who cannot go home, who cannot find stable housing in the city. So these are not a very big group of people, but there are some of them. So I think the government is able to provide this kind of urgent services to the most vulnerable groups.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. Thank you so much. Let me, for this statement, so the infrastructure is very important, and we need to have also special infrastructure in order to let the water be accessible to everybody. But there is also some solution that we can provide for vulnerable people who does not have access to water, to create fountains in the areas where they are, so that they can go and have access directly to water, or to bring water by tanks and install reservoir for them. Very, very good. Let me go to Lagos. Mr. Mimunu, please. Can you give me some thoughts about how and what are the role to access to safe water can play in the pandemic situation?
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
I think I hear more also about the slum areas, those vulnerable groups that are not really enjoying water. But let me start by saying that one of the main lessons learned during this period of pandemic is that digital transformation is a key element in fighting this pandemic. Technologically, solutions are allowing us to adapt the way we work to the current context of isolation and distancing. The solutions are very robust, reliable, and secure enough to facilitate smooth communications between decision makers and operational and administrative staff. Now, the many lessons we can draw from this pandemic should prepare us to meet increased water demands. As experts already foretell, that 47% of the world population is going to experience water scarcity by 2030. We must therefore understand that our eagerness for creation should not result in construction of our planet, Our weekly food intake should be mainly composed of fruit, vegetables, and grains. Without water, our lifespan will be 14 days. Our entire existence is closely dependent on one single exhaustible resource. So I think we need to learn from this. The lesson learned from this should be our preparation from next and future pandemic. We should not in the future be talking of vulnerable areas. We need to start planning and make sure that we reach out to every human being on earth and make sure that public water and potable water is a must that must be done
very
to everyone.
important.
Very important and very critical. So the lesson learned is this. that we must take special care of vulnerable groups and bring them into our fold and create avenue for them to benefit from all these potable and public water, because our system is closely dependent on one single accessible resource. In a moment where we feel vulnerable and surprisingly dependent on more external systems than we imagine, life is reminding us of what makes us human beings and where we should probably focus our attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mimino, for this very important témoignage. Of course, we will take recommendation from your témoignage concerning the future resilience, how to face future pandemic on water. Let me go to Jakarta and have the statement of Mr. Priyatno concerning the access to safe water. Please.
Thank you. Jakarta currently has 63% of surface coverage ratio, meaning that only 63% of inhabitants have access to safe water through the pipe water services from Pamjaya. 37% of Jakarta population have no access to improve source pipe household
about the number
connection.
of questions, and it's true. We have too many questions for 30 minutes.
Don't worry, Alexandros. Very interesting. Okay. We are going to close it at 13:15. Yes.
Okay. Especially in high density communities with no water alternative, meaning that it's vulnerable group is the people that cannot have an access of pipe water. So our quick win program to serve the communities is through the what we call it kiosk, water kiosk, and then we put on the 170 hand washing station in public facility and densely populated and low income settlement as a quick win program. Every day we using the water tankers to supply the affordable group to ensure that they have an access to safe water from the ad hoc time. That's for Jakarta.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's go to Karachi, Farhan.
Yeah, well, as far as access to water is concerned, I feel it is related with one, availability of water and also an efficient distribution system. So now in the short term, what the public water utility in Karachi is looking to do is to provide hand washing stations at strategic locations where there is more vulnerability in terms of access and availability of water, particularly in the informal settlements. So that is one area where they are looking to make an impact, and UNESCO is also, going to possibly helping out here in providing those hand washing stations. But in the long run, I think we need to have a much more holistic picture. Like, for example, in terms of availability of water, I think a core area of focus needs to be on cutting down on NRW, the water that is lost during distribution. It's almost half of the water that gets produced. So that is a key area where we need to make an impact. Other than that, opportunities lost. Like, for example, in Karachi, there is no wastewater recycling. There is no water conservation program going on. And then also retail level water is not metered. So there is a lot of water, abuse going on of water supply services. So those are some key areas where there are opportunities lost. Public needs to be made much more aware in terms of how they need to use water, conserve water. And those are, I think, key areas that we need to focus into. And in terms of water demand, how you're going to manage them, key strategies in terms of times when, there are more problems, particularly in the summer. So I think it's a long-term strategy that needs to be embedded, one, between improving the availability of water and reducing water loss, and conservation, wastewater recycling, things like that. And I'm happy to say that in the present project that is going on, the World Bank funded project that is happening in collaboration with Water Board, all these areas are being considered. And so, for example, water loss reduction and improving water supply and sanitation facilities in the informal settlements. So all these are part of this 12-year project. And so we are hoping, that we will be moving in the right direction soon.
Thank you so much, Farhan. We have taken the statements of Mimunu for Lagos, so we won't go back to Lagos. Let me first of all tell you that we are going to close this first session that had focused on similar and diverse influence of COVID-19 on urban waterland aspect in different megacities that we have had. And we have presented the main problem that we have faced in the pandemic with the challenging issues as water, sanitation services, the statistics on water pressure, the vulnerable group, and the transmission of the virus in water, and how are we going to face this pandemic issue by enhancing sustainable development. The second session that I will start now is about our reaction. So we need to discuss together the strategies that need to develop and the strategy that need to be implemented in order to protect, to prevent, to prepare ourselves in water and wastewater management and services. So I will ask from Tehran, Madam Nasiri. I will ask from Wuhan, Professor Chan. I will ask from Mumbai, Professor Pramod, and from Jakarta, Professor Priyatnu, to give us quick answers, mainly 1 minute each or 1 minute and a half, concerning the urgency that we need to implement in order to cooperate together between public and the private sector. What are the communication tools that we need also to launch, to implement, in order to get the process be a very stable process, communication process, and what are the main challenges for this actions to be taken for the cooperative action between all the other sectors, private, public, scientists, civil society, which is very important, and also to let the people be aware of the solution that we need to implement. Let me start with Mrs. Nasiri from Tehran, please.
I'm so sorry, Professor Fadi Komer. Can you hear me now? Because
yes, I'm hearing you, Madam Nasiri. Thank you.
So sorry, excuse me. But something which is very, very important for me is that we should try to be with every person in our population, because the range of their money is really very, very different, and we should try to be with them. And something which is very, very important is trying to give them the basic, the better drinking water and tap water, because during the last months, for example, in Tehran and in Iran, the statistics of COVID-19 patients has increased during the last month. Why? Because many public actions had started again. So something which is important is that the government should have a specific program for every person as the population. But if you give me just 1 minute, Professor Fadi Komer, I just want to talk the importance of wastewater treatment, and this is very important. But because as you know, the presence of this virus in sewage originated from the fecal discharge of infected patients are found. So this is very important to work with wastewater management, because the polluted wastewater, which is related to coronavirus genomes, may enter and add to groundwater resources, may add to soils. And even, for example, in southern part of Iran, the treated wastewater, which sometimes is not very good, the agricultural actions there is very high. So we should try to be, for example, and to help in our own city, in our own country, and something which is very important, and to be together. For example, if I worked in 3 cities of Iran, Tehran, Qom, and Anzali. Why I selected Tehran? Because it's the capital city of Iran. Why I selected Qom? Because the first pandemic item was in Qom, and the 2% which were died, they were found in this city. And this is a very, very religious city, and everyone from all of the cities of Iran, from China, they come to Qom every, for example, at least one time a year. So this is very important. It was very important. So I worked in this city regarding the raw wastewater and also treated wastewater. And in the raw wastewater, they found that, yes, the RNA was positive, but the only item that was positive in treated wastewater was in Tehran, in wastewater treatment plant in Tehran. And because the reason was that the chlorination system was not very good. So we should really, I mean that all of the scientists in
I can't hear you,
should
Mrs.
try
Nasser.
to
Yes.
help the
Okay. Thank you.
And we should try, yes, yes. And something which is very important, that the government should have a specific budget for water and wastewater treatment systems in order to develop their treatment systems. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your answer. I guess you have answered the question of the cooperation and the question that will be asked on the last panel, on the next panel also. Thank you. Let me take the answer of Professor Chan from Yuhan, please, about the cooperation between different sectors and the communication process that we need to launch.
Okay, thank you. I think Wuhan has a few experience to be shared in terms of cooperation mechanism, but I will keep it short as I only have 1 minute. So first, an online work team is formed between different sectors such as environment, water resources, and the medical system. And this team can be shared information instantly through online communication. And secondly, we also formed an internal group of communication inside the sector of water resources between like pump station, water treatment plant, and water supply plant. So we can also circulate those informations instantly. And also the Bureau of Water Resources has cooperated with scientists and to release a very quick guidance book just for a reference for the operation of different facilities during COVID-19 pandemic. So interestingly, Wuhan has also waived some fees for of water treatment for some private sector corporations to encourage their participation of collective water management. But to us, I think the main challenge is the public involvement. And also, I think because of the lacking of the special knowledge from the public, and I think that's the main challenge. And I'd like to hear some other maybe good experience from the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this very important statement. Cooperation is very well established in Wuhan, but we have a gap with the public, how we want to enhance communication with the public. Mumbai, Mr. Pramod, please, can you give us your statement in 1 minute, please?
So far as Mumbai is concerned, water supply augmentation plans are in place and they are being implemented with the help of private sector with all challenges together. So the demand, the gap between demand and supply will continue, but that will remain same. As the demand increases, supply also will increase as the plants will be in place. The biggest problem about the access to safe water is related mainly to the housing problem. Because of the high density in certain areas, the access is becoming difficult. So the most challenging thing will be to dispersal of the population around the city or within the city, for which the housing policy and housing challenge has to be taken mainly by the private sector, because that's the only sector we can take care of such housing problems. The corporation may not be in a position to do that. So in a cooperation from the policy from the municipal corporation and the initiative from the private sector will bring about the dispersal of the population, which will increase the access to the safe water. As regards the technology, because of the constraint of the space, now that there is a need for a technology which will have a lesser footprint so far as treatment is concerned, so far as what collection is concerned, and wherein the private sector has a major role, including their research houses. That's what I would like to submit here.
Thank you so much also for answering about the technology. Let me take Mr. Priyatno from Jakarta. If you can answer both questions, cooperation between the sectors, communication process, and the technology, please. Yes, go ahead. Priyatno?
Yeah, sorry, I forget to unmute. Yeah.
Yes.
Ensuring the water services continuously to our customer and also for our inhabitant that currently not using our services is the main issue. So distribution services is on the normal situation in the pandemic era. We still can continue distribute 2,200 liters per second as per usual. And then we communicate from raw water provider and also to the communities. For the people who cannot access our services, we build some what we call it water kiosk, and then the communities operate the water kiosk and serve the community by themselves. So this is the collaboration among the governmental and also the non-government organization and also the communities on the providing and was sinking in public facilities and also the densely populated areas without pipe water accesses. So we mobilize, as previously I stated, that with the water tankers to operate the head washing sinking. So day by day we use water tank to serve our water kiosk to ensure that people who cannot access our services can have safe water access during this pandemic.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this answer. I will close now this panel and go to the other panel concerning the technological tools. So I will ask Professor Tank also to give us a short brief of 1 minute about the technological tools that we need to implement, we need to apply in order to facilitate our overall reaction against the pandemic. Professor Tang?
喂，主持人能够听见吗？喂
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, Professor Tang.
Thank you.
Is there any
Wuhan,
translation? Is there any
Wuhan,
translation?
We have designated hospitals. For example, for Leishanshan and for Huoshenshan hospitals, we have some technologies to have multi-level disinfection and so that we can control the residual chlorine in the wastewater. And in our disinfection, we take into consideration both the convenience and also the efficiency. So right now, our these cans, we do not have to open them, so it can really help us to disinfect very conveniently. And every time when there is a problem with the residual chlorine, we let the factories, let the plants know immediately. And also we pay attention to the amount of disinfectant in the water. And we also have other technology, for example, bleaching and others, to carry out physical disinfectant. So these are the technologies that we have used.
Okay, thank you, Professor Tang, for this very important answer. Let me go to Karachi. Professor Farhan, can you give us, please, a brief answer about the technology that we need to implement in order to facilitate the overall reaction against the process, please?
Sorry, forgot to mute. So I will first talk about and already something that the Karachi Water and Sewerage Board, the public water utility in Karachi, is thinking of doing, and they are thinking of using sewage discharges, checking them for virus traces, coronavirus traces, in order to kind of identify possible localities where such virus may be existing, so that they can be used as an advanced measure for identifying hotspots within the localities. So there, already the Karachi Water and Sewerage Board is in contact, and the World Bank might also be facilitating this process of universities here, academia, where such testing facilities can happen, and we can find out evidence, so that if there is a second wave here in Karachi, so already we have this mechanism in place which can forewarn us. So that's one area which already is being looked into, and hopefully it will lead to more innovations taking place of making the systems much more technologically savvy and well equipped to meet challenges, not just pandemic but other kinds of challenges also.
Thank you, Farhan, for this very brief answer and highly important answer to face this pandemic and other exceptional situation also. Let me go to Shanghai. A brief statement from Professor Chow, please, about the technological tool.
Me or Cao, we have so similar names. Professor. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So for the new technologies, actually not for the water, but Shanghai has quite successful experiences regarding to the big data to the society. I mean, because Shanghai never restricted people traveling to or outside of the city in the past 3 months. So we created a cellular app, show the green code, square code, QR code. I'm not sure if you cannot see clearly here. So I can just show this to the public, to the guards in any public places to indicate I'm safe. I didn't go to the high risk areas. I think this is very convenient. We can, so this is the first, the widely used in Shanghai and everywhere in China. So, and the big data also can trace persons' trajectories in the past month. So that's for the people. That's the most popular new technologies after the pandemic, in the pandemic. So for the water, actually, I am not quite familiar with what new technologies have been applied to the treatment. But I know in Shanghai or Wuhan, we have already strengthened or improved the security of water supply and the water treatment, the wastewater treatment. And also, I think for the long-term track of the microbes density or species in the wastewater in the sewage system, we perhaps can put some micro robots in the water to track the number and track the species. This has been done in MIT many years ago in their Sensible City Lab, a lab who is focusing the city new technologies. Perhaps this is one of the possibilities for us, for the mega cities or high density areas to monitor the sewage water's security. Yes.
Thank you so much, Professor, about your input, especially on the usage of robots. Let me pass directly to the next panel, which is related to the financial aspect on the cost of this pandemic that for the operation of this crisis. We had a very good input from Lagos, from Mimino before, about the rising prices of chlorine, the rising prices of all the tools that we use. So I will not ask you to join the panel now, dear colleague, but I will ask Dr. Wang from Guangzhou to give us a short brief about the financial cost that are being now shown in order to overcome the operation of maintenance concerning the water sector.
So basically, the cost for water operation has not changed much. But there's one thing that we need to pay close attention to is that the pandemic has caused a significant impact on the economy. And water supply and water sewage treatment in the Chinese context is that the operators are mostly state-owned enterprises. And so we need to, they are relatively stable in terms of the context of disturbances and uncertainties. But as long as the economy is in peril, if the economy has not recovered, then we are facing the risks of insufficient funding, especially if we want to improve the quality of water infrastructure, especially for the underdeveloped area. So the economy is the key, although right now we don't have any major problems yet.
Thank you so much, Professor Wang, about this very important answer. Let me pass to Mumbai to promote, to give us an idea about the cost impact, please.
In Mumbai,
very short answer, please.
The total revenue of water comes majority of the commercial consumers. They bear about 70 to 75% of the cost. It gives us cross subsidy to the residential consumers. They pay less than the cost of production. In terms of that, then if the economy is not, if economy doesn't improve or do not come to the level before the pandemic, the burden of the additional revenues, additional cost will ultimately come on the consumers, residential consumers or the domestic consumers, which have to pay much more than what they are paying at the moment. That the impact I see, because the revenues will be reduced as per a guesstimate, not even an estimate, would be reduced by about 30 to 35% from the of the total revenue which has been budgeted for this year. But the operational cost, project cost, capital cost will remain same. So this will have to be compensated by the resident, the domestic consumers. That's the initial finding that we are having at the moment on the economics of the water supply. In Mumbai, water supply includes sewage also. The sanitation is also included in water supply charges.
Thank you so much, dear colleague, about your answer. Just to give you a brief about the additional cost in the MENA region, in one of the articles that I wrote a month ago at the Parliamentary Journal in France and the Political Journal and Parliamentary Journal in France, we made this exercise, and it happens that the supplementary cost is about $280 million each month, supplementary cost on the water utilities concerning the extra cost for water potabilization and sanitation. Let me close this session by a final question, and inviting from Jakarta Mr. Priyatno to give us his own experience and the action that have been taken and implemented by Jakarta in order to benefit your city of this unique experience, unfortunately, which is the pandemic of COVID-19. Please.
Okay. Since we have a large scale of social restriction, so physical distancing is the mode that we have to do on the water management operation. So all of the evaluated is very limited physical interaction among the people. So we have to ensuring that with the optimum workforce, we can still continue our services to the customer. So in the production side, we have the opportunity to make automation. In the distribution side, we also have the opportunity to make automation, but also in the customer management. On the billing side, we can do on the meter reading side, we do the automate reading through the what we call it RFID process, and also for the billing, we can use our online payment point. That's the new normal that we can use during the pandemic and also afterwards.
Thank you so much for your answer, and let me take, please, the opportunity to tell you that our colleague who were not able to answer to the question that was sent to you, you can do them by mail, and we're looking forward to have your alignment on that, please. So we're waiting for the answers of the question by mail. Let me close this session, which was very, very interesting. And we have explored all the communication process, all the technological tools that we need to implement in order to overcome this pandemic crisis. So the session number 3 will tackle the opportunity that are created during this period for developing an open platform of science education, technology, digitalization, and innovation. So what can support a wide range of stakeholders, including hydrologists as we are, and water professionals also as we are. So let me ask very briefly a short responses from my colleague from Zhangyu. Mr. Wang, could you give us please a short brief on that?
I'm sorry, I missed your question. What was the question again?
So the question is, how can we develop within this period a scientific educational platform for technology, for innovation, in order to have access to all stakeholders, including hydrologists and water professionals? So what are the experience and the lesson learned from this pandemic concerning the scientist society that we represent and the water professional that we represent by using the education, by using technology, innovation on this, between this wide open frame of stakeholders that we represent? So what are the lessons learned on all these processes linked to sanitation, linked to potable water, and what are the future norms, the future plans, the future services that we need to provide. So I'm combining both sessions together, please, both panels together.
Okay. In my opinion, I think the lesson that we learned through the pandemic is that we need to let science lead the discussion. We cannot politicize everything, and the scientific view is especially valid science. Let the experts discuss, let them debate. Even the virus or the pandemic situation, especially those related to water, there are a lot of things that we do not know. However, the pandemic provides a opportunity that everyone can engage and have an opinion and have an open discussion. This is a perfect opportunity for public education. Otherwise, there's no other circumstances where everyone is interested in finding answers. So in this case, I think it is very important to create a platform where scientific experts take a lead in educating the government officials, educating the general public. And having said that, I think there are also a lot of things that we need to develop in the future. Especially, we need to change this kind of command and control mentality. Although we have made a great advancement in hydrological technology and infrastructure development, there's always things that we cannot control, we cannot expect, we cannot predict. So we need to be prepared for future uncertainties. When things happen that are out of control, what we can do to adapt, to survive. I think these are the important lessons. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have managed a crisis. Now we need to adapt, and we need to officially put all these elements into standards and norms, so that if it happens that we need to manage exceptional situation like that, we'll be all ready as scientists and water leaders. Let me go to Lagos and ask our colleague, Mr. Ligan Shudendi, to give me a brief on that also, please. Our colleague from Lagos is on the panel with us, or no? Okay, so let me ask Mrs. Shimin from Madame Nasiri from Tehran to give us some forecast, observation and forecast, as well as some hydrological climate monitoring and prediction about the global water crisis that Iran is facing and mainly Tehran is facing. Please.
Yes. Actually, as you know, there are really many questions related to the quality of drinking water, tap water, and also wastewater. So something which is very important is that each government in each country should have a specific strategy in order to control the related items to water quality and wastewater quality. And as our friends have talked about it, the scientific view, the education, even, for example, in my opinion, in the government assessment is very important, and the parliament. So the basic item is that if we want to have less crisis related to COVID-19 pandemic, each country should try to have a specific financial item regarding increasing the level of water treatment systems, increasing water resources management. And this really needs and something which is very important for me is that all of the managers in all of the countries in the world they should try to be together, because in each country the situation is different. So we should try to be together, the scientists, the managers, the water management, they should try to be together in order to try to facilitate the something which is very important is access to water quality with the best item, because wash
Can't hear you. Yes.
with all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Nasiri. Let me take two more questions, put two more questions for all of you, the colleagues. And the other question that we cannot take on the floor, please send the answers by mail. I will present to you two questions. The first question is related to governance. We didn't talk yet about governance, maybe very briefly. What are the typical governance gaps that were recorded through this pandemic sanitation crisis, and what are the lessons learned in that we can do in accelerating the multilateral governance? And the other question is, how can we enhance global cooperation and diplomacy over the countries and between the countries? So this question I will ask Professor Chao Liu from Shanghai to answer it, and another answer from Farhan from Karachi. And I will close the session 3, then I will take the question and answers from the public. Professor Chao Liu, please. I can't hear you. You're mute.
I'm sorry. It's muted. It was muted. So for the global cooperation, I think we have much to improve. I mean, especially between the two of the largest country, America and China. We may all know that there are some communicating gaps between China and America now. So, but the politics cannot be the barrier of the global, I mean, in facing of the global pandemic. So how I finished my PhD degree in America. I stayed there for 6 years. Then I came back to Shanghai, and I'm in Shanghai for 2 years now. So I'm very sad to see the gaps between the gaps of the Chinese and the Americans talk. So that's perhaps one of the prominent problem so far. And for the cooperations, I mean, between among other countries, I think this today is a good chance actually, because I have a chance to see the voice from the other large cities in India, Mumbai, and other Indonesian cities. So I can know more details there. And also you can learn more details in Shanghai or Wuhan or Guangdong. So I think we can hold more conferences or forums like in online or periodically to communicate with each other, and perhaps supply some of successful experiences from each one. So that's my opinion. Yeah. Hello, I cannot hear you. I don't know why. I just suddenly I just lost the sound.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I can hear you now. Sorry.
Thank you so much for your answer. Let me pass the floor to Farhan, please. Could you unmute your micro? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I would like to endorse what Shamila said to begin with. I personally feel, and this is something that is very close to my heart. I teach it also, the SDGs. I think the Sustainable Development Goals provide a very viable platform within which you can generate those kind of collaborations and cooperation between water utilities at a regional level more. For example, I can cite an example after the MDGs were enacted. We had this process called SECOSAN was created, and the South Asian water utilities used to meet every year to discuss, the challenges, what they have achieved, and data was shared, skills were shared. So I think SDGs provide a very good platform, and I think that the learning has to be brought also to the regional level also. For example, if you take the case of Karachi, city like Mumbai can, be a very good, water utility to deal with. Similarly, in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and those kind of countries. So I think yes, at the regional level, and then of course with interfaces at the global level. So I think the SDGs provide a good platform which we can utilize.
Thank you, Farhan, for answering these questions, which is very important. I would add to SDG 6 also SDG 2 and 7, because water, as you know, is coupled to food security and to energy also. So we need all of us to focus on the nexus, especially that the nexus has a big role to play on the governance side of tackling the water management also. Let me thank you all for this third session that has focused on lesson learned towards the adaptive and responsive urban water management in our megacities. And this session considered a lot of approaches in order to overcome the water crisis, such as emerging opportunity, the science, education, technology, and the innovation tools that we need to use in order to cope with this crisis. Also, what are the means of improvement that we need to implement in the communication process in order to fill up the gap in the governance side, management, and in the global cooperation. Thank you so much. I will pass the floor to Alexandros in order to now open the question and answers of the public. Please, Alexandros.
Thank you very much, Chair. We have overall 9 questions, so I would try to speed this process up because we're running late. The first 2 questions are addressed to Dr. Duan Chen and Dr. Chao Liu. And the first one is, was there any special treatment needed to be conducted in Wuhan in wastewater treatment plants? And the second one is, did you have any direct evidence as contaminated water, that the contaminated water basically was a source of transmission of the coronavirus in your city?
Very interesting.
So,
Dr. Chao Liu.
Dr. Chao Liu and Dr. Chen.
And Dr. Chen.
Dr. Chen, did you hear me? We cannot hear you. Can I ask for Dr. Liu to start the answering? And Dr. Chen, can you reboot your system to come in, because we cannot hear you?
Okay. So thank you, Alexander's question. Actually, that's only the that's only an observation. We have not done very rigorous research on these findings. We just found several workers in the wastewater treatment plants. The workers there, they test positive 6 months ago, actually, in Wuhan. That's but due to because when the outbreak of the COVID-19 in Wuhan, everything was messy. We knew nothing of this. So now we just began to look back what was going on. As I said before, this needs to be done in the future seriously, because the conclusions will influence so many people and so many facilities. So, but the one thing can be confirmed, that not only in Europe, Paris, but in China, we have found live virus in the wastewater in the plants. So that's one comfort fact. But we don't know. We don't know if the positive patients were infected in the plants or outside of the plants. So I think this is a very tough question for the researchers. Actually, not for me, because I'm a urban science research or urban planner. I don't do this. I think this need a more professional study in the future. Yes.
Definitely. Dr. Chen, can you try again to see if we can hear you? Unfortunately, we cannot. Just to go back to Dr. Liu, did you do anything different in your wastewater treatment? No, right? You maintain your usual operations for wastewater treatment, right?
For the details, actually, I know very limit. I know very limited knowledge of the details because I am not in Wuhan. But I talked to some scientists worked on this issue several days ago to prepare for today's panel, today's discussion webinar. So actually, I researched this question, the pandemic's influences in the city, actually from another perspective. My work, my own work, focuses on the density, the population density, the building density, the public transport. If that has some solutions, associations with the pandemic, the answer is also very complicated. So that's my ongoing projects.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Chen, can you try now?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Yeah, I can hear you, but I cannot be here.
Yeah. So basically,
so I have to speak the voice of Wuhan.
Okay. So basically,
yeah, I think I just want to comment Dr. Cao from Shanghai. I think he raised some news that Wuhan.
Oops, you're stuck. Okay, for saving time, because Dr. Chen is stuck, I'm gonna move to a general question that goes mainly to people who are coming from utilities, by aisle utilities, and they asked if for utilities that had reduced revenues, did they receive any subsidies from the government to cover operational expenses? Can we have any of the panelists who feel that they can discuss that? Did we have any subsidization of the operational expenses for water utilities in any of the megacities? Dr. Chen, can you try again? Because I see you, but I cannot hear you again. Maybe it's now we cannot hear you. Maybe it's your settings. Can I invite the other panelists to let us know if they had to get their utility subsidized to continue with their operational expenses?
Yes. Can I speak? This
Please.
is Lagos.
Please do.
Yes, from our own side in Lagos State, we did receive some subsidies, but no subsidies that is enough to do this. So, and the government is working very, very closely with the water utility here to make sure that that the water is subsidized during these pandemics and beyond. Of course, there are more funding needed, which we are also working as we speak right now to see how the government can come and then spend more money on it. The answer is yes.
Please. Who else want to come in?
Yes, this is Dr. Imran from Karachi. Our government give subsidy to our water board. Like in month of April, 20% was generated by the board, and 80% was supported by the government. And in May, 40% generated by water board, and then 60% all operation charges were covered by the government. So yes, we were able to manage it accordingly with this fashion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Imran. Alexandros, let me please make a wrap up and make some announcement and close the session. We had 20 minutes late over the time program. First of all, I would like to inform the audience that we will have a panel number 2 with another 8 megacities that starts at 4 o'clock p.m. And I will invite the audience to fill also the UN survey also that we have talked about it. And let me also thank all the colleagues that have participated to this very important panel. It's a very important experience for us in order to define the global challenges of our time with COVID-19. And it is, to my point of view, the most important global challenges, maybe at the same level of climate change also that we are encountering now. So let's grab all together this opportunity to work together, to engage ourselves in a continuous cycle of assessing, planning, adapting ourselves, collaborating together among all sectors at the national level, international level, so that we became much more stronger and much more experienced and committed to overcome these challenges. Our action with the COVID-19 could serve a stepping stone for the upcoming strategies to be implemented in megacities. And we need to continue working on this platform together in order to be aware of any other peak that might happen, any other exceptional situation that might happen in water, so that we will overcome all this crisis and secure ourselves and the future generation. I would like to thank our ADG, Dr. Shamila Nair Badouel, for enhancing this very important panel that will continue this afternoon. And I would like to thank all the colleagues from the IHP program that made from this initiative really a very successful story for all of us. I will pass the floor now. I will thank you and pass the floor to Alexandros, also to give us the result of the survey, Alexandros. Thank you so much to everybody. And apology if I didn't let other colleagues pass to the floor because of the sake of time. Believe me, it's very hard to manage this type of experience.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna show that you know, we had a pretty well balanced audience, where mainly from coming from a university and research background, and also we had people who worked in the private sector, 10%, and other public utilities and agencies. So majority were public utilities and agencies and academics, close to 30-something% each, followed by the private sector, NGOs, and other colleagues. On the second question, because this is moving too fast for me, how important do you consider water security in combating the COVID pandemic? The vast majority consider it essential. And in general, which of the following issues have been affected by COVID-19 pandemic in your city? Again, the vast majority of our participants said that the economy was the first victim, followed by the social welfare, and then followed by livelihoods. And of course, we have 1/3 of them putting all of the above. So services, environment, social welfare, livelihood, and economy. I'm closing this one. Let's move to the second part of the survey. Fadi, you are muted. Okay. Here we see a question: to what degree has your work been impacted? And we see that more than 1/3 of the people who responded felt that it was a significant disruption, and a major one for 15%. That means that more than half of the participants felt that there is a serious disruption in their work because of the pandemic. And when we asked about water services, what was basically the effects of the pandemic, we saw that more than 50% spoke about water utilities operations as they are in the front line, followed by a revenue reduction, which goes to answer also the question that we had from the audience from oil utilities. And then we have the water supply service reduction and treatment at equal levels. The last question on this group was what actions have been taken in response to COVID-19 water services. And we see that we have increased sanitary and safety measures by the majority of the people who answered saw an increase in measures taking place, and also a major part of the workforce working virtually. There is an alarming 20% that saw staff reduction, because this, would be very also give some challenges for the future. We saw some billing suspension, which is a very good economical measure. And then we saw that we had more work in the academia for wastewater monitoring to track COVID-19 spread. Last but not least, the last question of that survey. Can we have it on the screen? Okay, which should be the future priorities? So very close call on that one, because we have an integration of public health and water management as the first suggestion, followed only by 1% less on expanding reliable access to safe water for vulnerable populations, and building infrastructure resilience, which was with 65%. Building operational resilience was the next choice of the audience, followed by accelerating digital build-out. And other technological upgrades was the last choice. So this summarizes the survey. We would like to thank the audience who participated, and of course the panelists. I want to join the voice of our chairperson, our IHP chairperson, Dr. Fadi Komer, in thanking the panelists and all the participants for making this webinar a reality. And we're looking forward to cooperating with you and seeing you in the near future. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you so much, Alexandros. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day and a great night for our colleagues in the East.
Thank
Bye.
you so much. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.